I am a senior fellow at the National Council of Applied Economic Research, New Delhi. Today we are privileged to have Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan visiting us at NCAER. Professor Kalirajan is a professor of economics at Crawford School of Public Policy at the Australian National University. He is an adjunct professor at Madras School of Economics in Chennai and a visiting professor at the International University of Japan in Tokyo. It's a privilege having you with us, Professor Kalirajan, and thanks very much for having participated in a recent workshop that we had organized in New Delhi on India in the Asian century. Please do let us know how did you like and what was your opinion about the workshop that we had organized where you were one of the participants.
Thanks a lot for having invited me to participate in the conference and also asked me to come here to extend the one for a few days. The conference was really a great success because right now everywhere, not only in India but also in Australia and also throughout the world, everybody is looking at India to become the greatest superstar in this Asian century. And you know that the 19th century belonged to Europe, particularly to UK, and the 20th century belonged to North America, particularly to the United States. So this century, which is named as the Asian century, it belongs to Asia, particularly to China and India. So the conference, what you mentioned, is now concentrating on how far India can go in this Asian century and whether the steps are being taken and it's being recognized and all those things. So it was a great conference. I really liked it very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kalirajan. And as you said, it is now time during this century for India to look forward to entering into the club where the growth rate is high, the growth is inclusive, and the economy performs well, so that there is a two-way interaction. The economy gains from the success that other Asian countries and Asian regions are going to have or already having, including NIE's newly industrialized economies, ASEAN, Japan and China. So India needs to be participating to both ways, to take and to give. And no doubt that the fast growing Indian economy would obviously be an engine of growth, not only for the Asian economies but also for the world. And you have rightly put forth the issue of comparing China and India being the two major economies growing at a rapid rate in the previous few years and hopefully in the coming new years. So what would you like to move forward on while comparing India and China?
Yes, that's a good question. Because you see, there are two different types of comparisons. One is you just compare China with India in terms of the growth rates, saying that China has a double digit, but we haven't got it yet, so low. So that's one way of comparison. But there may be some people who may not like this kind of comparison because they might see that these two are working in two different environments. But what I would like to say, the comparison should be based on what is the potential of India and what is the actual achievement of India. So let us compare that. So in that way of comparison, we don't have any other objections because we would like to realize our own potential. So how far India has realized its own potential and how far China has realized its potential. So that kind of comparison will be more useful. What do you think?
Right. I think this is a very good way of putting it, that each country has got its own dynamics, each country has got its own growth path or achievement to success. In the case of India, I think it is now important to look at both internal and external dimensions. And as we discuss, you and I have discussed at various points, that the internal economic structure requires both growth and inclusiveness, which means more and more poor people need to be uplifted, and growth has to be accelerated. Obviously, without growth in the economy, it is difficult to talk of being inclusive. So both are important phenomena, or both are important angles from which an internal economy or the India's internal economy need to be seen. You said something very interesting about the potential. I am very optimistic that India has huge potential of growth by 9 to 10% for the next 20 years. Even though there are some serious issues at the moment with regard to the macroeconomy, both macroeconomy in country and external economy, we are passing through a difficult phase. What needs to be set right, I think, is the sectoral balance. That the agriculture is its over-dependence on workforce to the extent that contributes only 14%, 13% or 14% to the GDP, but the workforce dependence still remains at 50%. On the other hand, the manufacturing, share of manufacturing in India's GDP has been sticky at around 17%. Services have done extremely well as far as their share in the economy is concerned, but they are not creating jobs. So many jobs that we could evacuate or we could transfer surplus labor force from agriculture to services. Hence, I think manufacturing is one of the most important sectors, and we need to see to it that manufacturing, in particular the labor-intensive manufacturing sectors, including food products, processed foods, leather and leather products, textiles, and rubber products. These are employment generating sectors. Not saying that modern sectors should not be there, but I think it's important to have labor intensive manufacturing growth rate grow fast, and there are various constraints that we recognize. Professor Kalirajan, your views on India's internal domestic sectoral structure would be very illuminating.
I agree with what you said so far, that's perfectly all right. And of course, I'm not going to say anything new about how to realize our potential, because I give you just a simple example. For before the 1991 crisis, we had a kind of average annual growth rate of between 3.6 and 3.8% or something like that. But then after the reform, suddenly our growth rate is about an average 6.8 to 7%. So why did we get this growth? So which means we had this potential earlier, and these reforms set the things right, so we were able to achieve it. So like that, now what we have to concentrate is more on infrastructure, because everyone clearly sees and also understands that India's infrastructure is in a very bad shape. So we need particularly to develop the infrastructure, which is the reforms. So naturally we can achieve a bit more than the 7 to 10% what you were saying. So infrastructure is a big bottleneck, and then I think we should. So in this case, I'm not saying that we should always think about the government. The government should do it. I think the public sector should do it okay, but the private sector should also concentrate on this. That's why these public-private partnership programs. So that should be more intensified, and then it will be more focused. So the involvement of the private sector is much more important, and that is the way it has been done in other countries. So we have the look east policy, but we have to learn from what the East Asian countries have done and what will go there.
Right.
So that is more important also.
Right. And I fully agree with you that while services may not require the kind of hard infrastructure which manufacturing needs, and if manufacturing has to grow rapidly, we definitely need hard infrastructure in the form of roads, ports, airports, railways, and power. Power is one of the most important sectors, which would fuel the growth of infrastructure itself and the economy and the manufacturing sector. But all said and done, I think yet another issue that I thought I would like to highlight is the issue of labor regulation. Many of the industries or many of the manufacturing units might prefer to remain small because they get incentives, and if they grow, they fear that they would come under the ambit of regulation. Yeah. And there have been debates on the issue of labor regulation, but keeping in view that only a very small percentage of labor force, less than 10%, is covered under some kind of social protection, and all others are left out, and a large portion of the labor force also belongs to the informal sector, and hence low productivity. So both labor law and reform of the labor law, as well as the issue of infrastructure, is important. The third angle I would like to add to is that the reforms on our custom duties, the reform on our border tariffs, which have now been very going slow, also need to have a review. And that takes me to the area of India's relations with the rest of the world, with European countries and the Americas, and also the Asia Pacific region. Since Professor Kalirajan, you come from the Australian National University, you would have a view from there of what India's role should be in the Asia Pacific economic cooperation. As you said in the very beginning, that this is the century which belongs to Asia Pacific. So how would you like to put your views on India's role in Asia Pacific century?
Yeah, I think not only Australia, but many of the Asian countries and even around the world, they expect India to take a leading role in terms of various in terms of agreements, various agreements, particularly in trade and investment, so that the investment area is boosted towards coming to India. So many of the trade agreements now have been successful. For example, Japan is now showing a lot of interest in coming in with foreign direct investment and transfer of technology can be done. For example, manufacturing industries growth definitely depends on technology and also the infrastructure which you mentioned. And there, I agree with you, labor laws are there, but you clearly put it, why that people are not trying to go beyond is because of the regulations. So those regulations are removed, but then the management also has some role to play. So we have to look at the management side also, how they are creating. So these are things we can easily get connected with the East Asian countries. But what we have seen through our research is India has integrated very well in the financial sector, but it has not integrated that much in the trade sector, because India's trade has increased from about 8% in 1972-73 to about 40% in 2010-11. So, but on the other hand, the financial sector integration, 8% in 1972-73 to 102% in 2010-11. So that shows, India's financial sector reforms has been a little bit better shape than in the kind of trade sector reform. And in terms of security issues also, India is playing a larger role because Indian Ocean is an important area. It has about 50% of marine trade and 70% of the oil things are going through. So that's an important area, and India has been recognized as the protector of piracy and other things in this region. So now what we expect India is to become a greater trade force, trade and investment attracting force for the East Asian countries and also for the world. And the United States recognition of its nuclear deals and other related issues, and now Japan's willingness to come for providing nuclear for civil. All these things are clear indication that India has been recognized as a great source of.
Absolutely. And what you have very rightly said is that we need to look at now India's trade policy, particularly with trade integration, economic integration with rest of the world, but more particularly with the East Asian, South Asia as well as Asia and Pacific. And there, my concern lies on the fact that we have signed, that is India has signed various trade agreements and is further going to sign many others. But these are small trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, which all other countries are doing, many other countries are doing because the WTO Doha round has not been successful. What we see, yet another thing is that even FTAs may not necessarily be the ultimate source of creating trade. We can see that India and China has become India's second largest partner, first largest partner in some years in import sourcing, and third largest export destination country. So that surprises me that we do not have a free trade agreement with China and yet we have trade growing. So the Ricardian theory of comparative advantage is still alive and kicking. However, also, having said that, we should also realize that there are two big agreements taking shape in Asia Pacific, and India needs to play its cards carefully because it has recently become a part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement, where there are 10 ASEAN countries and China, Japan, South Korea, India, Australia and New Zealand. On the other hand, some of these countries are also part of yet another agreement, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. The only worry is that there should not be a conflicting attitude while this regional cooperation moves forward, because China is not a part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and US is not a part of the RCEP, our Regional Cooperation Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So let's wish that the two agreements move with a cohesive force rather than conflicts, and hence they become building blocks of multilateral cooperation, not only in Asia, but TPP also has many countries elsewhere in America there, and so we in India need to have a comprehensive stance or comprehensive study on the role of the potential of trade agreements as well as how far have they succeeded in achieving the targets that were set forth. So at the end, things cannot be concluded, but what is important is that both domestic reform, which means domestic growth, which is inclusive, as well as the external front, that is cooperation on the trade, cooperation on security, investment, financial sector, as you said, is already, that's the way to move forward. And thank you very much, Professor Kalirajan, for joining us in this conversation.
Just I have one more thing. Because you see, we are really interested in the South, in the Asian integration concept. There is a missing link between South Asia and East Asia, which you know that you have been working in that area. So, in order to strengthen that South Asia-East Asia integration, one of the important things is we have to strengthen the economic relationship between India and Pakistan. So that is very good, and it is really happening. There are good signs, because the trade exports between Pakistan and India have been increasing. Pakistan's export last year increased by 19%, and Indian export to Pakistan increased by about 12%. So the signs are there, and they have got about 3 trade agreements last year in terms of customs and unification, harmonization and other things. So it's happening. I wish that this continues. So if these two are connected very well, then naturally the entire Asian integration becomes easier.
I agree with you, and thanks for having raised that issue. The security, peace and security, the economic integration brings peace dividend, and this peace dividend brings a more, the utilization of the potential that South Asia has within its own country, and to put it in a way that I had written once, more butter and less guns are important for the success of South Asia and its integration.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.